Then Abraham Lincoln makes a promise to himself. He's going to get off that dirt farm. He's going to do something with his life. He's going to be a merchant. He's going to be a lawyer. He's going to do anything to get off that farm. He gets off the farm and he goes to New Salem and he falls in love with a girl named Anne Rutledge. And by all accounts, this is going to be the love of his life. And we know that there's something going on between them because when Anne comes down with a sickness and she dies, Lincoln goes into his first documented clinical depression. There were 2 times when he totally collapses mentally, emotionally. And the first time Lincoln totally collapses is when Anne dies. He describes that he is so upset at her death, he throws himself on her grave after she dies. He cannot stand the thought of snow and rain coming down on that gravesite. He's sick at heart. He is so sick at heart that he has to go to his friend Joshua Speed's house, and I mean he is flat out depressed, lying down, clinically depressed, in a total collapse. This would happen another time in his life. He proposes to marry Todd, and then he has second thoughts. He withdraws the proposal. Again, he goes into his second, what can only be described as a clinical depression. And I mean, folks, he is flat out on his back again. Isn't that right, Mr. Lincoln?
Well, thank you.
Sweet. What great time. We also have Mr. Douglas with us. Senator Douglas, welcome.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
What did I say at the beginning of this talk? What would we think if Abraham Lincoln walked into the room? And we've had it happen.
Tall. 6'4".
That's right, 6'4", 180 pounds.
But a good wrestler.
And a good wrestler.
The early days.
So let's sum up here, because I think now that this would be a good time for me to sum up. Again, what are the 4 points I've made about Lincoln's leadership? You would notice that relationship was important to him because he was able to connect with people through his stories, his humor. He hones it in the courtroom. He knows how to get people to get along with his point of view. Come after him. He becomes a very attractive person, even though he considered himself, and many others considered him, lucky. That's the first thing you notice about Lincoln. He can connect with you and laugh at himself and get others laughing at him and that kind of thing. The second thing, we've seen his passion expressed early on in ambition, but also in the desire to serve a higher cause. And we see that he gave himself to his country in that capacity. That third capacity we saw of him as a great leader is we saw his imagination. He had the vision to be able to see that this country was not just about North and South, although that absorbed 90% of his energies, but it was about East and West. And using that legacy that Henry Clay had left in the American system to try to knit this country together so to expand west and be a great nation across the continent. And then we've seen that Lincoln not only overcame material privation, but overcame emotional poverty to get where he was. Now, there are many other aspects of Lincoln's life that we could plumb in this brief time we have together. We could certainly talk about outstanding communication skills. People say that the greatest communicators in the presidency were Woodrow Wilson, Ronald Reagan, FDR, Abraham Lincoln. And we know that Lincoln's great literary endeavors have become part of our canon as Americans. If you look at the mystic chords of memory from the first inaugural address, with malice toward none from the second inaugural address, government of, by, and for the people in the Gettysburg Address, school kids learn these resonant lines, take them to heart, and they become part of the vocabulary of other politicians who want to make their mark in American history. Lincoln's literary legacy is permanent, not only for our country and the American canon, but in world literature. Tolstoy, for example, was quite taken with Lincoln's literary prowess. Other aspects, Lincoln knew how to prioritize. Now, he's kind of funny in this. Leaders always know how to prioritize, and Lincoln could stay focused, but he was a technology geek. Somebody with a new mousetrap or a weapon would come into the White House, the executive mansion, as it was called in those days, and he would be totally absorbed by new technology. He was a high-tech geek for his day. He also claims that he had no system as a lawyer. That's why he had to have Billy Herndon help him out. And he said he hired Billy Herndon because Billy Herndon was a guy with system, but a poor lawyer. But it turned out Billy Herndon didn't have a system either, and turned out not to be a great lawyer. He says, Billy Herndon disappointed me twice. So we know that Lincoln could prioritize when he had to. There are many other qualities of leadership that you would see. But I think with that, I have prattled on enough now that we have Mr. Lincoln himself in our midst, who's running for a very tough Senate race, and we have Senator Douglas. The year's 1858. And tonight you're going to be able to hear a debate between these two gentlemen. The famous Lincoln-Douglas debates have been carried by newspapers around the country. As I mentioned earlier, the stenographers and the Telegraph are carrying the debate. And your friends down in New Orleans or Charleston or parts east, like New York, they will be able to read about what happens tonight shortly after it takes place. We're very honored to have these two men with us. Thank you very much. Come on up, guys. Let's have you guys come on up.